I'd like to now introduce our final speaker, our keynote. Dr. Marleen Wong is currently the CEO for the Center for Safe and Resilient Schools and Workplaces, and a leading expert in trauma-informed education. Dr. Wong has worked for survivors and school districts of targeted violence and terrorist attacks, including those in Littleton, Newtown, Parkland, Oklahoma City, 9/11 in NYC, and San Bernardino. She has worked as a subject matter expert and K-12 program developer and consultant for disasters and trauma recovery after Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and Iniki, after wildfires in Oregon and Lahaina, Maui, typhoons in the Republic of the Philippines, and earthquakes in the US, Kobe, Japan, China, and Taiwan. Since 1995, Dr. Wong has been a consultant, curriculum developer, and trainer for the US Department of Education and Department of Justice. She was identified as one of the preeminent experts in school crisis and disaster recovery by the White House and the architect of school safety programs by the Wall Street Journal. We are humbled to have her guide us today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Marleen Wong.
Well, first of all, let me extend my greetings to each and every one of you, and thank you for the kind invitation to be here. Thank you, Board of Education members, superintendent, faculty and staff, every single one of you that are here today. And following Dr. Thurman's lead, good morning. Aloha. Did you know this is the official state sign now? It went through Congress in Hawaii, the shaka. That means eventually everything is going to be okay. Okay. So I come to you from Hawaii, greetings from there, and greetings from Lahaina. I was there in Lahaina right after the fires, and when I got there, nothing was left. It was a scar on the side of the hills looking over the beautiful ocean around Maui. When I look at the pictures of what's happened here, it's Lahaina times 1,000. You are in the middle of a very unique and difficult situation. And I want to put that into some context for you today, because as we learn from these situations, in a moment, in a heartbeat, everything changes. What happens? What happens to people? Well, first of all, we can talk about now and we can talk about recovery, but for the rest of our lives, as long as we'll remember, it's a life-changing experience. It's different for every single one of us in this room. It won't be the same, but for some, it means a loss of everything we know, not just homes, but for people, jobs. It may be that it'll be the loss of that image in our minds of the communities that we lived in, the way we wanted to live, the way we lived best, and that has come to an end. We have to find a way to move forward. We have to find a way to what they call a new normal. Often people don't see themselves as needing mental health support after a crisis or disaster, but the reality is, at some point in time, each of us, every one of us, needs to have the chance to talk with someone that we trust, someone who will listen, truly listen, without any judgment or criticism about what we've gone through, whether we're in the middle of that fire or whether we were far away with our hearts breaking. I've learned also in working at many of the school shootings, because I've been a consultant, a trainer, a curriculum developer for the US Department of Education since the burning of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. And I can tell you there were some people who say, I will never recover. So I'm just going to say, we have to be careful because their vocabulary may be rooted in the very depth of the loss of everything that they know, that they walked out regardless of whether they were rich people or middle-class people or working-class people or whatever kind of people, whatever those labels that we give to people, they're people. And they suffered in their own way, and you have suffered in your own way. Recovery, if we're going to talk about it, or just talk about moving forward, is different for every person. So sometimes people ask me, how long does it take to recover? I've worked with the parents of the children who were murdered in Parkland, Florida. It's been 7 years coming up in February. They said, I'll never recover. I'll never recover from the loss of my child. And maybe we'll feel that way too, but we can keep the memory of those that we lost, and as long as we're alive, their memory is alive. You're in the middle of a humanitarian crisis. We often think about a humanitarian crisis as being miles away in some far land, that is in another continent. People marching with just what they have across mountaintops, living in a desert after a famine. But let's just look at what a humanitarian crisis is. First of all, it's events that threaten the health, the safety, and the well-being of a community or a large group of people. If that's true, check in your mind, yes, I think so, or no, it's not. It occurs across a large landmass, a large area, and it requires local, national, and even international responses for help. Because it is caused by different factors, in this case fire, it requires a unique series of responses in the immediate aftermath and over long-term periods. If we look at the fire in Lahaina, it hasn't been rebuilt. They're just barely clearing all of the burnt debris, the debris that has crossed that entire city, and they haven't rebuilt. And if you think about it, all the people in Maui, many of them lived in Lahaina, but they also lived in surrounding areas. They weren't rich people. They were people who worked in the hotels. They were cooks and maids. They were gardeners. Or they were kupuna, and that means older, respected adults. So when we look at it, a humanitarian crisis is complex. It can prevent a large number of people from accessing their fundamental rights. The right to live, the right to be fed, the right to have a place to live, and for children and families, the right to an education. When such a crisis causes a large movement of people, it's a refugee crisis. We have a refugee crisis. We always think, oh, it's about those poor people who live in third world countries. We're in the middle of a refugee crisis. Where are all these people going to go? Where are they going to live? And if they're living with family, how long are they going to live with family before they're able to find a place that they can call their home? Like in Manhattan, when I was there after the planes plowed into those Twin Towers, I worked with the Chancellor of Education and all of the superintendents in the New York Board of Education schools. And over 3,300 people died in those buildings, but they came from all 5 boroughs of Manhattan. And it affected everyone because there were people who came from the Bronx who came there to work. There were people who came from Staten Island. They had to take the ferry every day. So now we know also, if we think about those kinds of disasters, that Crises are often interconnected. It's not just the fire, but it's what happens afterwards. And that's complex, and it is political. So we have to keep our focus on the children and their families, and our faculty and staff and their families, and the schools. So let me move forward and just talk about what our mission is as the school district. One is to help reestablish calm routine so that when children come back to school, they come back to the classroom they know, remember, and love. Calm routine in trauma research is one of the first steps that every person can take to welcome children back and to get them back in steps towards healing. The second is, it's a question for you, and I know that your school district has done so much. This meeting today is really evidence to me of how advanced your school district is in its thinking about what are next steps. How do we bring those children back and their families with love and care? So do you have all the skills that you need? For instance, do you know what to say and what not to say based on the most recent research? And if you need to know what that is, it's psychological first aid. That's what it's called. There are many models of it. I helped develop one after 9/11 for the New York schools. There are other ones. We just created one called PFA Teach, and your school district has received some of that training. But it's for everybody, because when kids come back, they look for the person that they know. They look for you, and you may not even know that in their minds, when they come back, they've chosen you. We want to unite our children with the people that they see every day, their teachers and their caregivers at school. They want to see that secretary at the front desk saying good morning. They want to see the custodian giving them a high five. They want to see the ladies in the cafeteria. Those people are so important. And the last thing is, often we think about the children, but the first people that we really need to talk to are teachers, faculty, and staff. Because in this situation, as we learned after Katrina, they were victims too. So they need the opportunity to process what their experiences have been, what they need to do, what they need to know, so that they can be ready to welcome the children. It's that old adage about airplanes. If there's an emergency, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, then help your child. Because if you're not clear, it's going to be hard for you to help the child or the person next to you. Well, I want to not go into everything that I was going to present, because I think I said, are we on Chinese people's time? Because like, that's okay, I grew up with that, all right, I'm good. But I'll do tell you that children who do not receive support after disasters or trauma, there's tons of research over the last 25 years, and it all says the same thing. There's decreased reading ability if they don't get support and help. There are decreased rates of high school education. There are more suspensions and expulsions because, you know, kids act differently. Not all kids are going to go, oh, thank you so much for saving me. Some of them are going to be mad because they were mad before this. They're going to be mad after this. Watch out for bullying. In Lahaina, some of the kids wouldn't go to school because as they went to their new school, the kids there said, how does it feel to be homeless? And they didn't want to go back and have to answer that. They felt so awful already. And also, the research shows there's lower grade point average. So let me skip here. There's all kinds of research I was going to share with you. When we do safe school training, There's 3 things that President Obama said. Used to be 5 mission areas and go through, prevention, mitigation, what's mitigation, blah, blah. And after Newtown, I was asked to speak at the White House about rethinking student discipline and trauma-informed education. And he said, I'm doing away with this. You guys can look at it if you want to. But there's 3 things I want you to consider after an act of mass violence or a disaster. Number 1, are you prepared? Are you prepared before something like this happens? Like, do you have the training you need? What do we know about other disasters? What are the trajectory? How long will we be in this honeymoon period? What's next? What comes next? Are there going to be ups and downs? Oh yeah, for sure. Before we get to a new level, it's going to get not days, not months, but years. One of the research studies that we did was after the Northridge earthquake, and what we discovered is we were providing interventions for trauma because people were traumatized by their being in their homes and the breaking apart and fire starting. But 2 months later, it turned into depression. Children didn't want to come to school. Children were depressed. Parents were depressed. Because then you've got the hard work, the really hard work. Is there anybody here from FEMA? Is there anybody here from FEMA? Okay, so I worked in, as I said, in New Orleans. I traveled with the Secretary of Education over 4 states after Hurricane Katrina. You know how you go to New Orleans and you go into those t-shirt shops with the nasty t-shirts? So they created one for FEMA. And instead of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the t-shirts all over Bourbon Street, all over Canal Street, they said FEMA, fix everything my ass. Now, I'm not saying that FEMA can't help you. They will. I had a friend whose house burned down 3 times. But it's hard work, and there's a ton of paperwork, and you just have to keep going. And if you need the help of other people, get it. Get the support. Sit down with them. Have them sit with you to fill out all of those forms. So I want to say one thing. I was the dean at USC, senior vice dean at USC for almost 14 years, and I headed up a lot of different programs: field education, the Cohen Military Clinic, and the telehealth clinic. And the person who took over the telehealth clinic had this wonderful thing to say. Her name is Dr. Sarah Calabozo Soto, and she said, just one little statement like, "I'm here for you," can help a person who has lost everything feel just a little less helpless. So we talk about risk factors, tons of risk factors everywhere, but one thing I want to say is, from my experience, risk factors are not predictive factors because of protective factors. And everyone here in this room today is a protective factors, from the highest levels of our organization of this school district to every single one of you who interact with other people, to the world. You may be just one person, but to one person, you just may be the world. Aloha.